I had Logan Paul on
10
my
million.
podcast.
Would Logan do it with me?
Logan would kick your ass, I think. You're riding a fantastic wave. How could you not make some mistakes along the way?
How can you be for small government and then have the government dictate all these things in your personal life, right? You idiots. You got it completely wrong.
Can't you just wake up and stop? I was walking down the hallway like a darted bull with a needle sticking out of my ass.
Tell me the 5 steps to the gain to the point where someone like you would say, I want this guy in my life. I want to help this guy. Hey guys, JB here, the Wolf of Wall Street in the Wolf's Den for another amazing episode. I got a really smart woman who's accomplished a lot throughout her young life and has also, made some mistakes along the way and had some rises and some falls and re-rises again. So I have even that much more respect for her. Before we get to the actual podcast, obviously there's some things going on in the world right now which probably deserve a bit of addressing. So before we get started, I want to just, give you my take on what's going on politically. No, I don't want to make this too political because I'll alienate half the world. It's the problem when you get political. But there's things I have to say right now. Starting with this movement, which is the single dumbest thing I've ever heard ever. And before you judge me and hate me, you have to listen through to the end. All right? The dumbest thing I've ever heard is to defund the police. This is the single dumbest, most destructive thing that could ever happen to both the white, black, and any community. You do not want to defund the police. You need to increase funding to the police dramatically. The problem is, what do you do with the funding? You need to reassess how money gets deployed to train police. What are they using the money for? See, in my opinion, police officers should be just as much mental health counselors, just as much community activists. I mean, you're talking about an incredibly powerful and incredibly important job, yet in my mind, police officers are underpaid, they're understaffed, they're undertrained, under-resourced in the resources that should matter. Meaning, like, how do you learn to talk to people and de-escalate conflict? How do you learn to be an asset to the community? So when situations arise like in Atlanta, okay, rather than escalating with the proper training, I truly believe that the police can be so much more effective than ever having to make things so confrontational. But I don't think that we should be giving them more money to buy better weapons and tanks and surplus ammunition from Iraq or wherever it was. So I understand this idea, like saying, hey, we don't want the police to be, getting money to be getting more weapons to exercise lethal force, right? But what you want is a lot more money spent on training and hiring. You want more police who feel like they're not being overwhelmed, by the way, because so much of this is about emotional overwhelm. I have a theory that a lot of this is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You're looking at people who see things that we don't see every single day. And I'm not saying that they come from black people, white people, or anyone in between. They just see horrible things. Police officers, by their job, end up seeing the worst things that can come from human nature. And after a while, you can't unsee these things, and they change people, and they make them react differently. When people come home from war, and they hear a car door slam, they duck under and hit the deck because they think that there's a bomb going off somewhere. It starts to rewire how people's brains think. Because, frankly, I looked at this disastrous occurrence in Atlanta last week where a man got shot running with a taser gun. I'm like, well, why would the policeman shoot the guy when the guy had the taser gun? And the thing is, well, because he could hit him with the taser and then take his weapon and kill him. That's true. But there was also 4 other policemen around, so that really couldn't have happened. But then again, in that moment for the policeman, like I could only imagine must run through a person's mind that's facing conflict like this and made possible death. So like, it's really not fair to say that that they would react normally. I couldn't say. Like, I looked and I was just like, oh my God, why? Why would you do that? Why pull your revolver knowing what's going on? And I just wonder, like, if there's something going on in these people's minds where they're no longer normal anymore. Because it wasn't to me, it didn't seem like a normal thing to do. Like the guy's running, okay, he's running, let him run till he gets tired and passes out. The guy was like, he wasn't going to kill anyone, right? He was running because he got scared or whatever. And listen, that was a mistake. Of course, he should not have run. He should not have resisted arrest, right? He didn't deserve to die for that, right? I don't think I'm sure the officer could run it through his head a million times, like, what did I do at the moment? Like, what was it justified or not? The point is, in that moment, I don't think there's enough training happening. I think if you're going to do a job and be put in a position like that, you should be trained for years. It should be really hard to become a police officer. You should be screened for any predispositions towards things like racism, things like anger management. There's a lot of people out there who are police officers that shouldn't be, but very many more who should be and give honor to the job. Far more good ones probably than bad ones. But the problem is the job has got such power and such responsibility, and one mistake, a life is lost. Then there's bad assholes like that guy, that monkey from fucking Chauvin from Minute. That guy deserves the death penalty in my opinion. That guy's an idiot moron, right? Different story. Those are different situations, but you have to start wondering if there's something wrong going on here. That it's beyond racism. It's like I think that their brains are no longer wired correctly. Maybe you can't be a police officer then for more than a very short time. I don't really know. You have to start wondering, but what you don't want to do is defund them, because then you'll get the worst people in the world to be policemen, because only the ones that are doing it for power and whatnot are going to be in that job. You want the best people. In the same way, I believe that the lowest paid people are teachers. They should be the highest paid people. So should policemen. They should be paid very well. They should be respected, and they should be so scared to lose their job, because it's the greatest job in the world. You make tons of money. You get massive training support. It's an important job. They keep our community safe. And I've known some of the greatest policemen in the world that were friends of mine. They were loved by everybody. So to paint everything with a broad brush like that is ludicrous. And to think that to defund the police, defund things that are about giving them more weapons and training for chokeholds. Yeah, that I can see. But take that money and add twice as much to hiring more of the right type of police that are trained the right way. Like you go to countries like Norway, where like they haven't had a killing in like 10, 15 years. Why? It's like it takes 3 years to become a policeman. They're like 3 years of extensive training and counseling, and it's so much about conflict management. My God, the guy was sleeping in his freaking car. Okay, yeah, he wasn't even, by the way, he wasn't even driving the car. They said he was drunk. He wasn't drunk. He was sleeping in the car. How do they know that he didn't pull into the restaurant, shut his car off, and drink 10 quarts and was never driving drunk? They made him move his car. So he wasn't driving drunk, and he offered to walk home. My point is that in the moment, it's easy for me as the quarterback, hindsight 2020. Yeah, of course, you could have done that, could have done that. And I'm not saying I would have reacted any differently than that police officer who, in that moment, with not enough training, was facing that. So I'm not judging. I think it was a terrible thing that happened. Terrible. But the point is that it should have never happened. You need to have far more training. And to do that, you need to have a lot of money thrown at the police, but for the right type of training, to have more of them. So they should have more people always. They never feel overwhelmed and outnumbered, and never have to result to that thing pull the gun out. And by the way, that leads me to another point. In England, the police don't even have guns. Do you know that? The police don't carry guns. When you go to London, they don't carry guns. It's only when some really bad shit happens that the guns come. People come with the guns. But the police on the street, on the beat, they don't have guns. They have whistles. And so I'm serious. As crazy as that sounds, they don't carry guns. Now, I'm not saying that's possible in the U.S. with our gun laws because they'd be hopelessly outgunned. I'm not saying that's the answer. But I think that police is not necessarily just about locking up bad guys. Police people are mental health counselors. They should be that too. They should be people to save lives and be able to, be as much EMS training too. There should be so much more training that goes into someone that gets that job as a police officer. And also, they should be deputizing people in the community. Community leaders should go through training too and be deputized, not carry guns, but carry their own non-lethal ways. And they should be part of policing. Community leaders. There should be joint ventures with the community and police departments where they're working together as one unit to keep the streets safe. Nobody wants violence in their neighborhoods. Nobody wants robberies to go unpunished. Black, white, or anybody else. Everyone wants to have peaceful, great areas for their children to play safely. You can sleep at night and, hopefully not lock your door, but most people have to. But the point is that to defund the police would be a ginormous disaster, would resolve nothing, would make the worst people stay, and crime will skyrocket because there won't be enough police officers. We need police officers. We need the right types of police officers, and we need them to have enough training and relations with community leaders who are deputized, there's insurance issues there, so they're allowed to help intervene and stop with this. People gotta stop getting shot. I can't watch it anymore. You gotta be like me. I just can't hear it again. I don't want to hear about it again. I could not believe it. When I was like, no. It's like, no. I was like, just why? I'm like, what's next? Aliens are going to land? Is this all because they're trying to soften us? How much disbelief can we have so we can accept the fact that the aliens are coming next to do a landing? It's like, almost I'm ready. That's what's coming next, right? After coronavirus and this shit, right? But I don't want to ever see this anymore. It doesn't have to happen. It shouldn't happen. I don't know. Do you really have to take a guy to jail? He wasn't driving. You really need to go to jail because he was drunk? He wasn't even driving. He was asleep behind the wheel in a parking spot, blocking an entrance. Anyway, hindsight's 20/20, and a man is dead. More training is required, a lot more training. Years required to become a police officer. Much more money needs to be thrown at this problem, not less, more money, but money going to the right things, the right type of counseling. I think there should be PTSD counseling, regular meetings with people to make sure people are not getting into that cycle. There's also things they could do to offset PTSD. Where police are in that fight or flight mechanism, it changes their brain chemistry after a while, and they can instantly react. That cycle's gotta be stopped. Yes, there are no doubt there are racists out there, there are bad apples, right? But I don't think that's the core problem. I think the problem is that and much bigger than that. Much bigger than that. And the way to resolve it is with more money, not less, but money deployed in the right way. That's my piece. All right. And with that, let's get down to our podcast here with Sophia Amoruso, who's awesome, by the way. You're going to learn a lot about business, what to do, what not to do, the danger of getting money, taking money from venture capitalists, see what that can happen if you don't watch that. There's a lot to be learned here, all right? So we'll hear a quick word from our sponsor, which is me, all right? And then as soon as that's over, we'll get onto it with Sophia Amoruso. Talk again soon. This is a perfect time now to take a brief pause here, and I'm going to give everybody here a gift. I'm going to give everybody here free access to the introduction and the first training module to the formalized straight line certification program. This is a system that I sell for $5,000 here to individuals, to large corporations, medium-sized corporations as well, right? It's a very robust, interactive training with quizzes and exams. It's ultimately a diploma-based course that changes people's lives. But I figure what I'll do here is like 12 or 13 modules, but I'm going to give everybody, this is not one of those free things where I say, and you have to enter your credit card, and I hope you don't then forget to cancel. No. I'm talking really free. I'm going to just simply give you a link, and you sign up for it, and you get access to the introduction, then the first training module, which is the 5 core elements of the straight line, cracking the code for sales and influence. This alone will change your existence. You're just understanding what has to go into getting someone to buy from you. And again, there's no obligation. You're not putting a credit card in. You have to just enter your information here. And then after you're done, once you've gone through this, if you want to keep going, then we can have a conversation about you picking up with the rest of the training. But this first part of it is free. My gift to you. All right. Let me give you the link. The link is jordanbelfort.com. Simple, right? /bonus. BONUS. So after you're done listening to this podcast, go to jordanbelfort.com/ that's a /bonus, BONUS. And you'll be on a page. You enter your information, and that will give you access to this incredibly robust
training. You're going to get the introduction and the first module, which includes the quizzes, the exercises. And I promise you that when you're done with this first module, you are going to be blown away.
If you're not different today than you were yesterday, if you're not molting and shedding who you were before, why are you alive? What worked yesterday won't work today. Who you were yesterday, if you want to be that same person, right, you're just not learning, you're not growing.
All right, so I'm sitting with Sophia Amoruso, girl boss, entrepreneur extraordinaire. You've had some massive ups, you've had some downs, a nice comeback, you've had a Netflix series made about you. You've done a lot, and you're pretty damn young. So why don't we get started? Because here's what I want to know. I want to know, just flat out, what's your secret to success? You're one of those people that you've cracked the code on how to just start something, how to launch it, how to get traction, and you've also sold, to venture capital at some point, right? What's step one for you?
Step one is be curious, right? Just like understand what it is that you're doing. You can reverse engineer anything. You can observe the people that are doing what you want to do. You shouldn't do everything that they're doing, and you can find ways to be creative and learn from their mistakes. But ultimately, I think you just keep going. Like, right, you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get everything right the first time. As long as you're learning from your mistakes,
okay,
I think you're winning. And it's just you have to keep going.
Let me put it a different way. There's all these people out here that are intrigued by you. A lot of women follow you. You have conferences for women, right? So there's a very empowered mindset you have, and you empower other people. And yet, there are so many people out there not living empowered lives, not living their best life. They're capable of so much more, capable of being entrepreneurs, or at least directing their own future, having their own destiny in their hands versus sort of, just punching the clock and living at that sort of drudgery of, the gerbil on the wheel, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So what do you say? Like when I say what's the first step, like how do you break that cycle? Like how do you start a business if you're the average woman out there and you want to you want more, right? You want to, do you recommend you quit your job? Do you put your back to the wall, or do you try to start something that you could do on the side while you have what you're already doing and then slowly transition into that? What do you say? Like what's step one to like an empowered way of living?
Yeah, I think if you have, it depends on how much kind of overhead you have, I guess, personally. So when you're super young, I was 22 when I started my first business, Nasty Gal. I didn't have anything to lose, right? I could put everything, which was nothing, into this idea. Never expected it to become what it did. But if you have a family and a mortgage, right, it's really hard to step away from a stable job and put everything on the line. And I don't necessarily recommend that for somebody who has that kind of security, because it's important. You have to, number one is do no harm, right? With business, with your personal life, you should be taking risks, but the scale of those risks, I think, comes in a whole bunch of different packages. I think when you're young, you can throw everything at the wall. Generally, I recommend that people start small, put something out there, test the market, see if people are interested at all in what you're doing, and then iterate from there, right? Your first idea is not always going to be your best one. And there are so many tools, right? In 2006, I had eBay, MySpace, and PayPal when I founded Nasty Gal. And I was hacking all of those.
What exactly was Nasty Gal? Why don't you explain it?
Yeah, it was a it started with vintage clothing as an eBay store, eventually exploded and did over $100 million in revenue. But we were a direct-to-consumer online retailer, designer, reseller really and curator of fashion.
Did it start as almost like a consignment situation or no? Were you buying people's things up front for cash and then selling them on eBay, or just hooking up people that had stuff to sell with people who wanted to buy?
Yeah, there was no, I quote unquote held inventory. There was no commission or, consignment model. But I was going to thrift stores and spending $8 on a Chanel jacket and selling it for over $1,000, and my overhead was me. And my $500 a month rent, and my hot plate, and Boston chicken.
Does that still?
Oh, and Boston Market.
Does that still exist? To be able to go to a thrift store and buy a Chanel jacket for $8?
I mean, you'd think they'd be that savvy, but those things can happen, right? There are.
Is that like kind of like a once in a lifetime thing, or what do you really find at thrift stores?
I was curating primarily non-designer stuff, but I made it look like it had just walked off the runway. So in comparison to the stuff that the Olsen twins were wearing, which was like a thing at the time, you know, I could buy something that looked really similar and put it on a girl and turn something that at really like alchemically understand the perceived value.
Sure.
Right?
Merchandising.
And kind of
Basically
invent
merchandise it in a way that...
It was a brand with a voice. I put it on like a cool girl. I made her look like your friend. When you can't touch and feel a piece of clothing, all the context and cultural context that you wrap that thing in and can share with someone visually and with a description online, the more it feels like they can touch and feel it and they're part of that brand, which Nasty Gal was ultimately a brand. People were emotional about it. When someone bought a motorcycle jacket on nastygal.com, it was like a promise to her future that like she would be more bold, that she was not fucking leaving, which is what this coffee cup says.
Well, fuck average.
Yeah, fuck average too,
She
right?
wasn't average when she bought this jacket.
Nasty Gal really helped her step into her boldness in a way where it was far beyond a product. And that's what we're doing at Girlboss. But in many ways, the quote unquote product is the voice and is that feeling. It was fashion that through which it was a vehicle with Nasty Gal to have that feeling. But that's kind of been the throughput in my career.
So in terms of this idea that like, what is the first thing that someone does that wants a better life? Like what for a woman? What is it? Like they is it find your passion, find what you're good at? Is it take an existing business model and copy it, try to make it better, buy a franchise? What do you suggest? Is there a pathway that you sort of coach people down, or people come to you with all different ideas and all different sort of issues and drawbacks and problems and challenges, and you just can individually design something for them?
I don't have a recipe. I think when you're selling recipes to people, it doesn't benefit them, right? I put the onus on the individual to figure that out for themselves.
Right.
I don't want to sell anybody a formula. I'm not capable of building. I certainly don't want the responsibility of those things manifesting for anybody. But I think it's really learning yourself, what you're great at, and having a better life can mean leaving a shitty relationship. Having a better life can mean starting a business. Having a better life means generally advocating for yourself and challenging yourself and competing with yourself, thinking at least that your average is better than everyone else's best.
Right.
And living up to that rather than living up to a goal that necessarily, ultimately, if it's a big goal even, can be a ceiling on what you're able to achieve. I was naive enough, and you should always stay naive to a certain extent, to think that I could do, or not even think that I could do what I did. It happened, right? I built a business that did over $100 million in revenue. I wrote a book that was a bestseller. I didn't really anticipate any of those things, but I did my best. And that's really all you can do. And what improves one person's life can feel a lot smaller than what improves another person's life, depending on where they are in their trajectory.
So when you started this, was Nasty Girl? What was it? It was Nasty Girl?
It was called Nasty Gal Vintage initially.
Okay.
And then it became Nasty Gal.
So you built this up yourself, right? You started, and then you made a fatal mistake of selling it or letting venture capital into the company, right?
I think it was the nail in the coffin, and it was such a fun ride. And I'm not sure if I regret it. Because I own a house, and the first money in was out of a growth fund. They bought 20% of the company, and I controlled the business. It was a $350 million valuation when we were doing around $30 million in revenue,
right?
Which was over a 10x valuation for retail.
What
for
year was
retail,
that?
We weren't Snapchat.
Yeah.
The ability, the opportunity to scale fashion retail.
Right. The problem with that is you're chasing a valuation. Then you have to make it real. So the problem when you overvalue something like that is then you have to back into that valuation. You're forced to make moves that are really risky and aggressive growth. And next thing you know, your model that was really sublime and great when it was small, you almost have to
act like a big company before you're ready to be a big company, right? And it reverses on you.
Yeah.
Is that what happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, for what success looked like when investors came in and said we were worth $350 million was that we were well over $1 billion if we ever IPO'd or were purchased, right? If someone came in and said, hey, Nasty Gal's worth over $400 million, which someone did come in and do that, and I owned over 80% of the company at that time, that would have been an incredible exit for me. Our investors wouldn't have 10x their investment, right? Which is ventures investing in the most risky businesses, but they're just spraying money. They're not building it with you. Right. They don't always understand your business. They're not always going to make recommendations that are right for your business because they're not as in it as you are. And a lot of them have never operated businesses. It's all kind of like fantastical, theoretical, academic. This is what you should be doing with your business, but they've never done it. Most of them have never done it.
Right.
They're finance guys. And it doesn't mean they have great things to offer, but it's very different to recommend what you should do to build a business when you've never done that.
So when you sold out this 20% to VCs, you as an 80% holder, you still had full control of the company, though.
Yeah, the board was me, and I really wish I had built out an advisory board. Didn't have that. I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard boards are miserable. I had 2 seats. My investor had 1. There was no one in the other seat. I voted for that empty seat. We never voted until...
Why would you... I guess my question is, if you sold off 20%, you were in full control still. They had no power to tell you what to do. Why would you say that it was the VCs that forced you to do things? It was still... The ball was still in your court.
I was in my 20s,
or you just poorly advised, basically.
I was really... I don't want to blame anybody, right?
No, but you could say you just got really bad advice,
The only office I've ever worked in, my name has been on the lease of. The job I had before starting a fashion business was working in a lobby in an art school checking student IDs. I had never been paid more than $13 an hour. So
I guess my point is sometimes you get into a situation with VCs where they actually have control of your destiny and then you're fucked, right? But in your case, it wasn't so much that they said you got to do this. They just really kind of sold you this vision of what should be. You were inexperienced. You thought they knew better. Now you obviously know they don't.
I was really naive.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean I was taken advantage of. It means that I really thought we could build something that was worth over $1 billion.
I think what you said is very true, though. I think one of the biggest problems with VCs, and I see this all the time, I come from that world, right, is that a lot of these people, they think they're the smartest people in the room. Maybe they did well in school or something. They don't know the first fucking thing about business, about practical business, about buying something and then selling it at a higher price and having to do that a lot of times to really make money. And they have no concept. I've seen it again and again. It baffles me. So what you're saying adds up.
It's a rare thing. When that happens, it's a rare thing. And usually it's technology businesses that can scale. Like ultimately you build a product, right? And then the efficiencies of scale become where like you're just throwing off money because you have this digital product, right? Your margin is obscene because you employ generally the same number of people.
Right.
Your number of users, your number of revenue can be so exponential.
It happens in every industry. You have there's winners in every industry. There's winners in every industry.
It's super rare.
Yeah. There's a lot of really profitable companies in this world. It's not that rare. I guess it's your definition of rare. I think what happened with you, it just sounds like that you had something that maybe just wasn't scalable beyond a certain point. Although I think it probably was. Maybe you just tried to do it too fast. It seemed like you went from like 30 million, and rather than maybe the next stop would have been like 60 million. You tried to go to like $250 million or something to try to make the VCs happy to justify the valuation so you can go public, right? And next thing you know. There you go, right?
Bam.
Was it just that, though? Were there other things going on, like besides so there's one thing where you're growing too fast. Was it?
There was like infighting among the executive team. I had hired people. They got political. I had never managed executives. I was like, hey, can you diagnose the business and tell me what we need?
Yeah.
And I expected them to manage up and hold themselves accountable. I didn't know how to hold them accountable to the extent that I really needed to. And again, not blaming anybody.
No, you didn't.
There was a lot of competition. I mean, when your team knows that the executive team isn't aligned, it just trickles through the whole organization and people know it and they feel it. I had no idea what culture was. I didn't build a healthy culture. Millennials don't want to work the way that I worked. I was kind of a baby boomer in the way that I hustled. And I didn't really have a lot of empathy for what it was that they needed to be successful. I wrote in Girl Boss, if you're not walking as fast as me, why am I paying you? Right? If you're not walking, like I'm like moving through the office like this, talking to people. And you can't, I don't think any founder can expect everybody to work the same way that they do, because you're a maniac. You're a freak when you're a founder, and you're always going to work harder than everybody in the company.
It's interesting. It sounds to me like you're completely an authentic entrepreneur. You really are. Like everything you're saying, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been my whole life, right? And you haven't told me one lie or spewed any bullshit yet. Everything you're saying is directly on target.
I don't have time to make shit up.
No, I'm just saying, but it's real. No, it's real.
Thanks.
Everything you're saying is true. Your instincts are right. But I guess along with that, I probably guess that you look back at that and say it was the single greatest learning experience of my entire life. And despite that, the company went bankrupt and I lost it. What I learned from that was more than 20 educations at Harvard. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, 10 years from 22 to 32 building a business. 10 years was enough. I can't lie that there wasn't some kind of relief when it all fell apart. I, in some ways, was ready to move on. I had inherited all of the bad mistakes, all of the bad decisions that I had made, or things that I didn't know to do over the course of those 10 years. And a lot of them were irreversible, like having a happy team, building a healthy culture, not having silos and fiefdoms and all of these things that you have no idea people are going to do. Bringing in politics from big companies to a tiny company, trying to slap on what worked at barnesandnoble.com to a young business like ours and manage people younger than they've ever managed before. And golf doesn't really help you do business anymore. It's just very, very different.
Right.
I think I lost touch of reality a little bit.
In what sense?
People walked up to me and congratulated me everywhere I went, and I didn't know which thing they were congratulating me for. There were so many things happening that were so great all at the same time that, I mean, when you're clinking champagne glasses over some kind of milestone every week, it's kind of freaky. And, I could spend money. I had money for the first time, and I went from a bootstrap business. I personally had money for the first time, and I went from knowing the value of $1 and saying like, oh, that's expensive, to being like, whatever, it's a drop in the bucket. And really, literally, I wrote in my journal, like, the only way to know how to spend is to spend. So I guess I'll just keep doing it and learn what's worth it and what isn't. And I spent a lot of money. Personally as well.
Define like a lot of money. Like
I don't want to,
millions?
Yeah.
Millions, like tens of millions?
Yeah.
Okay. On what?
House, 4x4 foot limestone flooring instead of 1x1 foot or 2x2 foot that could come off the shelf, importing it.
Right.
Hiring the most expensive architect and interior designer for a 3,000 square foot house that I'll never probably sell for more than I invested in it. Taking friends on trips. I reinvested in Nasty Gal at the end. My investor, did a down round, and my investor said, round meaning a little lower valuation. A little lower of a valuation.
Not a good sign.
He didn't want to put more money in. He owned as much of the company that he wanted to. This is my primary investor. And when your primary investor doesn't want to keep investing, other investors see that. If you want to go get new money into the business, if they see that your current investor doesn't want to keep investing in you, it's a really bad sign. And the only way he said he would do it was if he would double whatever of my personal money I put back into the business. And so that was riskier than ever. I put some of my liquidity back into the business. I'll never see it again. But it got the company funded. And that's something I regretted after that. And I think it actually drove me to make money selling more books and doing things that weren't focused on the business. He thought my interest would be aligned because so much of my money was dumped into the business now, and actually did the opposite.
No, I get it. How did this impact your personal life?
You
were
know,
married
I
at
had
the time?
been.
Were you in a relationship?
I was married for like 8 months, and personally, I don't think it affected any of my friendships.
I mean, let's talk. Romantically. I mean, how was it like being a powerful woman, CEO, and in the VC world? And
it's weird. It's weird. It's hard, right? I married someone I had a crush on from the time I was 18, and I said, "Hey, like, if you go work, it's such a drop in the bucket, like." And I won't see you as much, so I'll support you for 3 years. Or I didn't say that. I said, cool, quit your job that you don't like and figure out what's next for you. And then 3 years later, I don't know. I might be under an NDA from like the like prenup or settlement. I have no idea. So I probably can't get too far into it. But the disparity was really huge. We didn't argue. I thought we had a pretty good relationship. We dated for at least 4 years before we got married, spent a shitload of money on a wedding. That's my biggest regret with getting married, was how much money I spent on the wedding.
How much did you spend?
$350,000 and was married for 8 months. It was a great party. It was a great party. It was in Martha Stewart weddings. It was so not me, right? I never dreamt of getting married. I've never like been waiting to be like whisked away. Like my parents didn't really instill that in me. They were like, my dad was like, you need to keep up with me on your bike, kiddo.
Where are you from? What part of the country?
I was born in San Diego and lived there till I was 7. And then I lived in Sacramento till I was like 17. And I was like, get me the fuck out of here.
Parents have money or middle class? Or?
Super middle class. My parents actually filed for bankruptcy. I watched them cut up their credit cards in like a whatever kind of office, counselor's office that happens in. My dad did home loans, and my mom sold houses.
Okay.
And they both worked entirely on commission their entire careers. And my mom worked weekends, and I was like tag along with my dad to REI. I'm an only child.
Right.
He didn't really like baby me or treat me like a girl. He just treated me like a kid and was like, hurry up, keep up with me. I'm going on a bike ride. Like, why are you, 300 yards behind me? Come on your 1 speed. And I was, going up bridges that were steep, and adults were walking their bikes, and I was on my 1 speed. Like,
sure. When you hit it financially for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Did you take care of your parents? Did you?
I paid off my mom's mortgage. It was the first thing I did.
Parents divorced?
Yeah. They divorced when I was 17. They were like, oh, well, she's fully baked, kind of. She's leaving the house, so.
Since we hate each other, you might as well not live together.
Yeah, like, whatever. We did this for you, Sophia. And I congratulated my mom when she left. And I respected her for the first time in a long time. And she's super happy now. And my dad's super happy. And he's learned a lot. And he's a lot less tough.
So what you said before, I asked you, do you give people a pathway? And you say, no, I won't do that. So I think what you were saying there, which is something I agree with, is that you're not in this whole biz op space where you're trying to sell people the secret to success in terms of like it's a turnkey solution, as much as trying to give them the skills to succeed at anything they do, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's like, here's what you can learn from my experience. It's not all going to apply to you. Take what you can. You're going to have to go make your own mistakes, but just go make them. Like, go take risks.
Like for instance, let me give you an example. Like, so when I teach people about entrepreneurship and success, I divide it into these very distinct attributes or pillars that you need to sort of learn to secure your own success. Like, for example, like on the outer game, meaning like the real world, you have to know how to sell, close a deal, how to market, how to get your message out to the right people. The basics of running a business, which I consider learning how to fail elegantly, meaning
I should
how do
take
you
this course.
No, but there's some certain defined skills. Like you have to be able to influence and persuade and negotiate, right? To be effective in this world. You have to know how to identify who your best buyers are potentially and reach them in a cost-effective way. And also the basics of running a business, right? Then on the inner game, mindset, having an empowered belief system for success and things like that, right?
I think all of that is really great, utilitarian, tactical stuff that everybody needs to learn.
Right. What I don't do, though,
it's not woo-woo.
Yeah.
It's not like,
it's
not you can manifest anything if you just repeat this mantra or.
Well, you can't, along with the utilitarian, there's part of that is, I believe that you can manifest, but only in conjunction with the real world skills of hard work, focusing your attention and your strengths in one direction, right? Yeah. But I guess my point is, I see what you're not doing is you haven't tried to say to someone, I'm going to sell you an eBay, 3 simple steps to get rich on eBay. That you don't do, right?
I could.
Right, but is that?
I don't think there's a bigger eBay story.
Right, but you haven't done that though.
I haven't. I should. I'm not organized enough.
Well, I think what happens a lot is I've made it a point not to sell a biz op. Like I don't say, I'm going to show you how to get rich in this business. What I say is whatever you want to do, whatever business you want to go into, what you're in, I will show you the skills that are required to grow that business, to make more money, to be more effective. But when you get into this idea of pay me money for a turnkey solution, it's very dangerous.
I think it's dangerous. I think it's irresponsible, right? I think that's what religion has done to a certain extent. People love it. They want to divest their personal power to follow someone and think that there is a specific path.
Santa Claus.
Santa
Claus. You don't want to believe in Santa Claus.
There's just like there's a fine line between giving people what they need to be successful, whatever that means, make more money, achieve things, and snake oil.
Right.
And there is a big responsibility between those two things.
Because there's a huge amount of snake oil on the internet right now.
There's snake oil everywhere, and it's probably the most long-standing industry in the history of humankind, and it'll always make money.
What do you think it is about you that attracts women to you as a mentor?
A lot of the advice I gave in Girlboss was the kind of advice your parents would give you, like really practical advice. I think that it's coming from someone that they can relate to, who's a community college dropout from Sacramento, whom most of our audience, community, fans have more education than me, right? There's a lot of books out there and stories out there of people who had a huge advantage and who got a loan or whose parents helped them or bought them a business or inherited a business or whatever that is. And most of us don't relate to it. There's a pedigree of MBA in person who, God, I wish I had that, who goes out there and starts businesses and has the right jobs and follows the right career path. This is a girl who, like I said, I do, is in many ways shooting from the hip, right? We have at our disposal ways to start businesses that we never had before. So like I said, I had eBay and PayPal, and I could hack MySpace to build a following. We have Shopify, Squarespace, Etsy, all of these tools where we can start Instagram, right, to sell things, to market ourselves. And there's much more of a toolkit to selling things online than there was when I started this. And there's so much more information that's been shared to do those things effectively. Whereas starting a business 20 years ago, if it was fashion or retail or so many things that you would have dumped all of your savings into, the overhead for signing a long-term lease, buying a bunch of inventory, right? Like you're so much, what you can do is so much more flexible online where you can, try things and learn them. But I think a lot of it is just that like my story is representative of so many women in the world who don't necessarily have the same advantage that the other people in the business book section have.
Do you think it's ever too late for someone to change paths?
No, that's absurd. If you're not changing paths, if you're not different today than you were yesterday, if you're not molting and shedding who you were before, why are you alive? What worked yesterday won't work today. Who you were yesterday, if you want to be that same person, right, you're just not learning, you're not growing. There's a quote that something like belief is the death of intelligence. It's Robert Anton Wilson. And I really believe that, which means that nobody fucking knows. Nobody knows everything. And if you're not learning,
My experience with success and making a lot of money is that it typically happens like this. You work really hard and you don't get the result. And you work really hard and don't get the result. In the same business, and you work really hard, don't get the result. And you keep working at something and you can eke out an existence, and then all of a sudden, something, that one little distinction, one little piece of the puzzle falls into place and the money pours in. Like the hardest I've ever worked is when I'm making the least amount of money. I believe making huge amounts of money is simple and easy when you're making it. The hard part is all the shit you got to go through to get that last piece of the puzzle lined up.
Yeah.
And then it pours in. What do you think about that? Do you agree or disagree?
I think there's a tipping point. Yeah, there's a point where you just don't see how it's going to manifest into the right thing, right? You don't see, I mean, you know a lot more about this than I do, but the compounding value of the efforts that you're making, where at a certain point, you just don't see them. You don't see how the habits, and even in your personal life, like what is adding up to and how that's benefiting you, because you're like, okay, like I still haven't lost weight, or, this doesn't seem to be different. But when you persist, there is usually a tipping point where you start to see the results of your efforts. And you kind of have to believe that that's there. You kind of have to be a little bit crazy. And I always imagine it like, and I don't know, my audience is kind of young to remember that in Indiana Jones and the whatever Holy Grail, there's a vast chasm. He has to get to the Holy Grail. He throws out those rocks, throws out some dirt, and sees the bridge, right? And has to believe that it's invisible. He just sees some rocks that somehow like landed on this invisible bridge, and he crosses it.
Right.
And you just have to believe that you can cross that bridge.
Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm driving at is I think what a lot of people do, the mistake they make, men and women, is that they'll try something and they look at success and money as the indicator of the real-time indicator of their efforts versus as a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
So like when I work really hard and put effort to invest in something, I realize that the actual out result I get in terms of profits and money, that's going to lag. It might be 6 months or a year behind. So if I'm sitting there judging my daily cash flow based on like the actions I take today, I'm going to be most of the time quitting before I figure things out. Like there's a certain point you need to essentially power through, call it belief, if you will, right? Just to believe, as you say, that I know I'm going to get there, right?
Mm-hmm. That's the difference,
right,
between the people who get it right and who don't.
And I think the problem, I just want to know your opinion on this, is that most people, their brain is really smart, and their brain is always projecting out to the future, saying, what do I think is going to happen? What's my worst downside? What's my best upside, right? And I think if you look at yourself and you get honest, say, I don't really have what it takes to succeed. I can't see myself succeeding in the future. I kind of lack the ability. I'm not really an outgoing person. I'm not an entrepreneur type. I'm not a sales type. And you really don't, when you play the movie out, if you don't really see yourself, like your identity as being someone that can have all those great things, it stops you from believing. So it's really about your identity and the skills that you have.
I think all the things that work for owning your own business, starting businesses, entrepreneurship broadly apply to someone who maybe doesn't belong in that environment, right? Someone who can be an entrepreneur inside of an organization and thrive in an organization. They still have to believe they can do it. Mm-hmm. Starting a business isn't for everybody. I think it's overhyped. I think I'm part of it being overhyped. I've really glamorized it. This generation wants to be on the Forbes 30 under 30, doesn't matter like where they are in their career. The pressure to be seen as a business star is really huge. But some people really thrive in an organization, and I think that's okay, right? Our definition of success shouldn't necessarily be one thing, mm-hmm. but at no point throwing in the towel and saying I can't do this doesn't serve anybody.
Who is your typical follower, like that comes to your events, and is it really mostly entrepreneurs?
It is, and it's mostly people, and if it's not someone who is starting a business or who owns a business, she's super entrepreneurial, she's super curious, she's bettering herself every day, she's investing in herself more than she's investing in anything else. She probably has a side hustle or wants to start a side hustle, which is something that, again, we can do so much more now, freelancing, whatever, however way you want to package it, than we could in the past.
Right.
She's around 30 years old. She's kind of grown up with me. So I wrote Girl Boss 2014, 6 years ago.
Right.
And she was like 24, 25. And now, Girl Boss was like, yeah, I'm naive. I killed it, right? Like, you can kill it too. And you can. But this girl has now, 6 years later, experienced some of the hardship that I hadn't when I wrote that book. And she's watched me fuck up, right? And be called like a fraud and have a generally panned and then canceled Netflix series and have, exposés and just total crisis PR about the business and me, and that I'm not a girl boss and everything you could ever imagine. You ask personally about what that was like. The divorce was like the least challenging.
Problem.
It was like the least challenging thing, having my name smeared by people who don't know me, don't know what happened, and have absolutely no empathy for how fucking hard it is to build a business was, like, I think the most challenging thing. And then having people conflate who I actually am as a person, who I was as a leader, not knowing me. Nasty Gal fell apart 4 months before the Netflix series came out. And the Netflix series told a story of someone starting a business called Nasty Gal, which I was no longer a part of, for the first time in 10 years, which people were like, people thought I still worked there. People thought I was just like the character, and she was kind of abrasive. I loved it, but really conflated like who I was with who they thought I was through the ups and downs of Girl Boss, of Nasty Gal, and then the person that had written Girl Boss, and then this girl depicting me on television very, very well. The up and down was less than a year, like the real peak and fall. I was on the cover of Forbes in June of 2016, called one of America's richest self-made women, which I probably was on paper. And a month later, my husband of 8 months left me. And 5 months after that, my company filed for Chapter 11. And then 4 months later, a Netflix series was made about my life. And it was just like, it was really a mindfuck. And it's taken me a while to sort through it. I'm writing another book, and that's like therapy. You've written books. You get to process your life and get paid for it. Like, who gets to do that? I still pay a therapist twice a week. But it's been a great ride. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've got a tough skin. I know what's worth stressing out about and what isn't. I know what's like petty bullshit. I know what people need to be successful in their careers, and have, really, I think, built a much better culture at Girl Boss, which is my company today that I, sold at the end of last year. I'm still super involved with. There's just so much in retrospect that I learned. Being a second-time entrepreneur, you want to say, oh shit, I fucked up my first business, I can't do it again. Being able to start over and correct all the things that you couldn't in the business that you had before, and having the hindsight that I have being a second-time entrepreneur is like, it's like heavenly. I'm going to make a lot more mistakes.
What exactly is Girl Boss, though? So the new company?
So Girl Boss is a community, both online and offline. So we have a social network at girlboss.com. We host conferences, workshops, retreats. A lot of it is IRL, so in real life. We're connecting women who may not otherwise be connected, right? You can spend a $10,000 to go to an executive conference that you've been invited to. That's not happening for someone who's at this stage in her career, who's in the middle of her career. So we're facilitating those relationships across Girl Boss. And then we're sharing the stories of women who I've been so lucky to have access to, have added to my Rolodex over the course of the 10 years building Nasty Gal, yucking it up over wine like every day, building great relationships, and giving our community access to someone they may not otherwise have access to, someone who may be speaking at Fortune conferences. And those are the women on my podcast. So we also have a podcast network. I do a podcast every week called Girl Boss Radio. Since 2015, we have hundreds of episodes. We have over 20 million downloads. And I've had some of the most accomplished women and greatest thinkers of our time. I get to learn for an hour. I get to talk to someone for an hour, which I would never get an hour of their time. I get to learn, right, for an hour every week from these incredible women. And so we're really providing the tools, resources, and connections. Also utility, right? How to save, how to ask for a raise. All of the things that if you Google them, you end up on WikiHow or Investopedia, and you don't know who's giving you this advice. So it's all wrapped in... Oh, yeah, La Cienega. Yeah. We're on Sunset.
It's a long story why we're here. But anyway, I used to be somewhere else. Got divorced too recently, so it's not a pretty picture.
I got the Wi-Fi. It's like the Wi-Fi password from the last business. What was I going to say? What was I saying?
You're saying it was you go to Investopedia and you get to
Yeah,
you never know who's...
You go to WikiHow, you go to Investopedia, you don't know who's writing this stuff for you.
Right.
They may not be like you, they may not be in the same stage of their career, they may not have experienced it, but that's what we bring, is that level of context and experience and credibility to everything that we do.
How many women are on the network?
We haven't really disclosed it, but a lot. We had a wait list of 50,000 before we launched. We're building an app this year, so it's on the web right now.
So it's free to sign up?
Yeah. Yeah. You can create a profile, you can connect with other people, you can message them, you can join different groups. Beautiful profiles and the thesis is that it's a place where you can share not just what you do, but who you are. Because that's kind of the way the world works, right? We're all trading on our personalities, our talents beyond what it is that's on our resume, because we're all capable of doing things that aren't just on our resume. So bringing together the person that we are on LinkedIn Monday through Friday and the person we are on Instagram Saturday and Sunday, because that's not really how the world works anymore.
Where do you see your future 5 years from now?
It's such a good question. Someone was asking me that, and they were like, what do you want your legacy to be? In some ways, I've inherited my opportunity, right? Like, I didn't choose to start Girl Boss. Like, our community chose for me. I couldn't not turn Girl Boss into a business. I couldn't not grow our following or not provide the kinds of things, extend what I did with that book into so many other channels. 5 years from now, I think people are going to work a little bit more remotely. I really like I love leading teams. And this is like so not inspiring. I do my best work from behind a computer. I started a business by myself behind a computer. I wrote a book by myself behind a computer, right?
Me too. What a pain in the ass that was. Holy
it really is. It's a blessing, but
I hate writing.
How many books have you done?
Well, I've written 3 that are published, and I'm about to start a 4th one this week. Not pretty good. I hate doing it.
It's a lot of work. I do it when I have a book in me. If I don't have a book in me, then it's really...
Yeah, I have something I want to write
right?
about.
I
just don't enjoy the process at all. I love speaking.
It's like a lot of homework.
Writing.
It's a lot of homework.
Yeah. I'm very critical of my own writing, and I polish everything. Every paragraph has got to be balanced and sound a certain way. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's not
totally
it's
different.
ugly to watch too. So anyone I'm with at the time is like, this is what you're gonna do for 5 months. Like, see you later.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. 5 years from now, I want to continue to be building Girl Boss. I want Girl Boss to be global. We have a really big global audience, in that the Netflix series went into 150 million homes in 195 countries. The book was in every bookstore and airport in this country. It's been published in, I don't know how many, a dozen, 20 languages. And so the interest in Girl Boss and the need for Girl Boss is almost greater internationally, because women in the U.S. are even more served than women in these other markets. So continuing to build what we're building and share what it is that I've learned, and I continue to learn. I'll always have something new to say. I'll always be learning, and I always want to share that, no matter how terrifying it is to confess, to help the women who've come to me for some reason and said, "Hey, like, we can learn from you."
Right. Got it. So with the people that come to you, is it mostly live conferences that you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They all over the world, right?
All in the U.S. so far, but we will go global. So we had
people flying from outside the U.S., right?
Yeah, we had women from 30 countries at the last rally. It's called the Girlboss Rally, but it's gonna be great. This is our 6th.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I got to tell you, I'm impressed. I think that you really have a very sober look of entrepreneurship. I mean, you've been at it for a while.
I'm not cynical, but I'm sober.
No, you're sober about it.
Yeah.
You get it. And I think that you have a lot to offer the world. You really do.
Thanks.
You really do. So I just keep doing it and rock on. I have no doubt that I don't want to say back on top, because I think you are on top right now.
Thanks.
At least in, whatever. I think you're in a great spot. And fuck all the people that said bad things about you, because they're assholes anyway.
Thanks. Thank you.
That's my belief.
Fuck them.
Especially for someone that's already, I've had myself, my character maligned. Now, the difference is I deserved a lot of what I got in the past. But then, you have to say, wow, I'm doing things so great for like 20 years now. Some people just love to focus on that one moment, that period of your life when you were, maybe not at your best. And that's human nature. So,
fuck up. Yeah.
you got to get a thick skin and move on, right?
Yeah, mine's doesn't look thick. It's
All
heavy
right.
metal.
Well, guys, listen, this is probably a lot of, hopefully, my hope is that I have many more women follow my podcast, because I think there's so much for women to learn this. I have some women, but probably 80-20 right now.
Yeah.
80% men, 20% women. So hopefully, Sophia, you're going to bring in a huge female listener. I had some of the great women.
Bring male listeners to Girlboss Radio.
I've had great women here, man. A few really great ones. Seriously, entrepreneurs, pharmaceutical girl. What's her name again? The pink Cindy Eckert was awesome. I mean, a lot of really great women on this podcast.
Oh.
And just so you know that I, Skinny Confidential, I come from a family where my mom was an empowered woman in the 50s working at a Big 8 accounting firm in 1957.
Wow.
Went back to law school when she was in her 70s.
Wow.
Oldest woman to pass the New York bar. Won Lawyer of the Year when she was in her 70s.
That's amazing.
That's the family. So I get it, And, so all the power to you and all the women out there. Please share this with your friends. Everyone needs to listen to this. All right? And with that, let's sign off for another great episode of The Wolf's Den. We'll talk again soon.